Please, don't take the cloth off. She begged, but the rancher did, and his breath hitched. The wind across the high Nevada plateau carried teeth in late October. It scraped the sagebrush raw and rattled the loose tin on Elias Thorne's barn like a warning. Elias had lived alone on the double-bar T for 9 years. 9 years since the telegram that ended everything in 3 short lines. He kept the place running the way a man keeps breathing. Automatic, necessary, joyless. Cattle, fences, the occasional trip to town for feed and silence. He hadn't spoken more than a dozen words to another human in a month. That changed the night the storm broke. He was locking the corral when the lightning showed him a shape stumbling between the cottonwoods. Barefoot, staggering. A flash of white cloth whipping around thin legs. Thunder cracked and the shape dropped to its knees in the mud. Elias ran without thinking, boots sliding, heart punching his ribs. By the time he reached her, the rain had soaked the cloth to transparency. It clung like a second skin, and she clutched it to her chest with both arms. Knuckles bone-white. Please. The word came out cracked, barely loud in the rain. Don't take the cloth off. Elias froze. He saw the terror in her eyes, wide, dark, reflecting the lightning like a spooked colt. He raised both hands, palms open. I won't. I swear it. Just let me get you inside. She didn't move. Couldn't, maybe. Her lips were blue. He shrugged out of his oilskin coat and draped it over her shoulders without touching the cloth. She flinched anyway. Then, slow as sunrise, she nodded. He carried her the last 50 yards to the house. She weighed next to nothing, all angles and trembling. Inside, the fire in the potbelly stove painted the room gold. He set her on the braided rug, grabbed a wool blanket from the chest, and wrapped it around her like a cocoon. Over the coat, over mystery cloth, careful not to brush skin. Name's Elias, he said, voice rough from disuse. You're safe here. She didn't answer, just pulled the blanket tighter and stared at the flames. He left her there while he heated water, found clean towels, dug out a flannel shirt and drawstring pants that had belonged to his sister before she moved to California. When he came back, the girl, no woman, he could see that now, was exactly where he'd left her, but her eyes tracked him. I'm going to set these here. He laid the clothes on the table. Bathroom's through that door. Water's hot. You take what you need. I'll be... He jerked a thumb toward the kitchen. Out there. She waited until his back turned before she moved. The bathroom door clicked shut. Water ran. Elias stood at the stove stirring beans he didn't taste, ears straining for any sound of distress. None came. After 20 minutes, the door opened. Steam rolled out. She appeared in the doorway wearing his sister's old clothes. Sleeves rolled 4 times. Pant legs bunched at the ankles. The white cloth was gone, replaced by a strip of it wound tight around her torso, like a bandage. She'd torn it narrower, to bind whatever lay beneath. Elias kept his gaze on her face. Beans are ready. She ate standing up, one hand on the counter, the other clutching the spoon like a weapon. When the bowl was empty, she whispered, Clara. He blinked. Beg pardon? My name. Clara. Clara, he repeated, tasting it. Welcome to the double-bar tea, Clara. She slept on the couch that night, curled into the smallest ball a grown woman could manage. Elias took the chair by the stove, rifle across his knees, and didn't sleep at all. Morning came pale and quiet. Frost silvered the grass. Clara stood at the window, watching the cattle move like slow red clouds across the pasture. Elias poured coffee into 2 tin cups. Cream's gone sour, he warned. Black's fine. Her voice was stronger, though still soft, like she was rationing words. He handed her the cup. Their fingers brushed. She didn't flinch this time. Days slid by in the rhythm of chores. Elias rose before dawn, fed the stock, checked fences. Clara followed at a distance, silent, learning. She learned where the hens hid their eggs, how to work the pump without freezing her hands, the difference between a heifer and a steer by the way they bawled. She never asked to help. She simply appeared beside him, took the bucket from his grip, carried it to the trough. When he opened his mouth to protest, she met his eyes, steady, unreadable, and he shut it again. At night, They sat on opposite sides of the fire. He whittled, she mended. The only sound was the pop of pine knots and the scratch of needle through denim. Sometimes he caught her watching the flames the way sailors watch the horizon, waiting for something to surface. One evening he found her in the barn, running her palm along the neck of his mare, Juniper. The horse nickered, bumped Clara's shoulder with her nose. "She likes you," Elias said from the doorway. Clara startled, then relaxed. "Animals don't lie." "No," he agreed. "They don't." She turned, firelight from the house, spilled through the open door, and painted gold across her cheekbones. "Why do you keep looking at my back?" The question hit him between the eyes. He hadn't realized he was. But every time she reached for a high shelf or bent to lift a feed sack, his gaze snagged on the ridge of cloth beneath her shirt. "Habit," he said. "Old medic training. You're hurt. I notice. I'm not your patient." "Didn't say you were." Silence stretched. Juniper shifted in her stall, straw rustling. "I'll show you," Clara said suddenly. "But not tonight." Elias nodded. "Whenever you're ready." She wasn't ready for another week. The first snow came early, a thin blanket that melted by noon. Elias was splitting kindling when Clara appeared in the yard wearing his coat again, sleeves dangling past her fingertips. She carried the white cloth, clean now, folded into a square. "Inside," she said. He set the axe against the chopping block and followed her into the house. She shut the door, latched it, then stood with her back to the stove. The room smelled of coffee and wood smoke. "I need you to look," she said, "and then I need you to forget." Elias's heart thudded once, hard. "I can do the first part. Second part's trickier." She gave a ghost of a smile, the first he'd seen, and turned around. Slowly, deliberately, she lifted the hem of her shirt. The cloth binding came next, unwound loop by loop until it pooled on the floor. His breath hitched. Her back was a map of violence. Burns layered over cuts layered over brands. Letters, numbers. A crude sunburst seared between her shoulder blades. Skin puckered and shiny in places, pale and thin in others. Someone had taken their time. Elias's hands curled into fists at his sides. Not anger at her, never at her, but at the animals who'd done this. He forced his voice steady. "Who?" "Doesn't matter." She kept her face to the wall. "They thought they owned me. I disagreed." He stepped closer, not touching. "These need tending. Some are infected. I've been tending them." "Not well enough." He fetched the medical kit from the high shelf, left over from the war, yellowed gauze and brown bottles. "Sit." She sat on the stool, spine straight. He worked in silence, cleaning, applying salve, wrapping fresh bandages. His fingers were callous but gentle. He'd stitched enough battlefield wounds to know how to avoid pain. When he finished, he helped her into a clean shirt. His this time soft from 100 washings. "There," he said. "Better." Clara turned. Her eyes searched his face. "You didn't look away." Wasn't anything to look away from. She studied him a long moment, then leaned forward and rested her forehead against his collarbone. Just for a second. Then she was gone, out the door to feed the chickens before he could process the warmth she'd left behind. Winter deepened. Snow piled against the north side of the barn. Elias taught Clara to ride Juniper's side saddle at first. She laughed when the mare bucked playfully, a sound like bells wrapped in wool. He taught her to shoot the .22, steadying her elbow until she could ping the rusted coffee, 9 times out of 10. She taught him to braid her hair when the wind tangled it, fingers clumsy but earnest. They still didn't talk much, but the silences grew companionable. He left the chair by the fire empty one night. She took it without asking. Another night, he woke to find her asleep on the couch with his open book across her chest. Treasure Island, the one his wife used to read aloud. He draped a quilt over her and banked the fire. Christmas crept up unnoticed until Clara dragged a scraggy pinyon pine into the house and demanded ornaments. Elias found a box in the attic. Paper chains his daughter had made the last year. They were all together. They hung them together, fingers brushing, breath fogging in the cold room. She strung popcorn while he carved a star from cedar. When it was done, the tree looked lopsided and perfect. That night she asked, "Do you believe people can come back from being broken?" He poked the fire. "I believe they can learn to carry the pieces." She nodded, satisfied. Spring thaw brought mud and the smell of sage again. The cattle grew fat. Clara's scars faded to silver threads. She still wore the binding when she worked outside. Habit, she said, but let Elias change it without protest. One afternoon, he found her in the loft tossing hay bales like she'd been born to it. Sunlight slanted through the cracks and turned her sweat-damp hair to copper. "Careful," he called up. "You'll pull something." She grinned down at him. Full wattage this time, and his heart stuttered. "Catch me if I fall, rancher." He climbed the ladder. She met him halfway, hands on his shoulders for balance. Their faces were inches apart. He could smell hay and sunshine in her. "Clara." She kissed him. Quick, testing. When he didn't pull away, she kissed him again, slower. His hands found her waist, thumbs brushing the ridge of bandage beneath her shirt. She sighed into his mouth. They didn't speak after, just held on in the dusty golden light, until Juniper whinnied for supper. Summer burned hot and dry. Elias sold the yearlings in town and came home with a length of sky-blue calico. Clara sewed it into a dress that swirled when she spun for the mirror. She still kept the white cloth, washed, folded, tucked in a drawer like a relic. Some nights she woke screaming. He learned to hold her until the tremors stopped, learned to weight her head on his chest, the way her fingers sought his even in sleep. One August evening, Thunderhead stacked purple against the mountains. They sat on the porch swing he'd built from barnwood, lemonade sweating between them. Fireflies blinked in the pasture. "Elias," she said, "I need to tell you the rest." He waited. The men who did this, they ran a camp up near the Rubies. Women, mostly. Debts, mostly. I was 16 when they took me. 10 years mucking stables, worse things. Her voice stayed level, but her fingers worried the hem of her dress. "I burned the ledger, set the horses loose, ran south until my feet bled, ended up here." He took her hand. "They coming? Maybe. Probably." She met his eyes. "I won't let them take me again. You won't be alone if they do." Lightning flickered. The first fat raindrops hit the tin roof. Inside, the storm raged. They lay in his bed, her choice, her pace, learning each other by candlelight. He traced every scar with lips instead of questions. She mapped the hollows grief had carved in him. When dawn came pale through the curtains, she whispered against his throat, "I love you, Elias Thorne." He answered by pulling her closer, as if he could shield her from every memory with the circle of his arms. Autumn painted the cottonwoods gold. Word came from town. Strangers asking questions, flashing a photograph yellowed at the edges. Elias saddled Juniper in his gelding, Smoke. Clara packed jerky and ammunition without being asked. They rode out at dusk, two silhouettes against a bruised sky. Behind them, the ranch waited, smoke curling from a chimney, the lopsided Christmas star still nailed above the door. Ahead lay whatever reckoning the desert demanded. But for the first time in 9 years, Elias wasn't riding alone. And Clara rode with her chin high, blue dress swapped for denim and determination, the white cloth tied around her wrist like a banner. Some stories end in gunfire. Some end in quiet mornings and coffee for two. This one was still being written, one slow heartbeat at a time. If you felt that hitch in your chest the way Elias did, go ahead and hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs reminding that healing doesn't roar, it whispers. And if you want the next chapter, because trust me, the storm's only getting started, subscribe. The West isn't done with these two yet.